We're going to talk specifically today about divorce. It is something that, marriage can only come to an end as a result of divorce or deaths, and our stats for divorce in this country are quite high. Women often find themselves trapped in an unhappy marriage and scared to leave because they don't understand the financial implications of getting divorced. So I think today we want to talk about how to prepare for divorce by asking yourself the questions, understanding how you married, and having a deeper look as to what your financial life would look like if you were to get divorced and how to prepare for that. And possibly the best place to start is by understanding how you married.
Absolutely. I think there's so many things to consider. And you talk about, the financial implications. And one thing I want to say is sometimes staying in a marriage can have financial implications if you're at a point where one of the reasons for getting divorced is because your spouse is not managing their debt, or what we call financial infidelity. So sometimes, just taking that step towards divorce can actually help save your financial security as well. But there is so much to consider, and you're right, Sue. A good starting place is to understand how you married, because this will determine how your assets are going to be divided, what is expected of you from the liabilities perspective. Another aspect to consider is your lifestyle. What is your lifestyle going to look like? What does it currently look like? What do you expect it to look like after the divorce? Are you going to be staying in two separate households? Do you need to downscale? Do you want to stay in the family home? So there's a lot to consider when starting to prepare yourself for divorce.
What about retirement funds? Maybe Hannah, you can talk us through, because a lot of women obviously contribute towards their retirement funds and are worried that, in the event of a divorce, they might have to give up a share of their retirement funds.
So it works both ways. It is dependent on how you married, but it would depend on what assets each spouse had in their name. And you are entitled to a share of the retirement fund depending on the calculation. So yes, it is a reality that you do face, that you need to either give up assets or part of your retirement funding, which could set you back.
So and that would be a divorce order at the, made at the date of the divorce.
Yes.
But let's talk about, I suppose a lot of women are fearful of leaving a marriage because they don't have the financial means to cover their living costs leading up to a divorce order. And there's a way that women, the Rule 43 interim maintenance order, that women can bring in order to secure some kind of maintenance while the divorce proceedings are going on.
I think you need to partner with, firstly, a competent divorce lawyer who can just help you understand and unpack what to expect, as well as a financial planner who can help guide you through the financial implications of getting divorced, what is required, how much you will need, and how to access those funds.
Debt is a big thing in marriages, and obviously, women are also fearful about the amount of debt that they might have in their own names, the amount of debt that they have in a joint estate. Maybe let's just discuss a little bit about debt in the context of a marriage, getting divorced, who's responsible for what.
So again, back to how you married. So if you are married in community of property and there is debt in your spouse's name, you also liable to settle that debt. So that can be quite frightening. So it's always important to make sure that throughout the marriage you're on the same page. When you are married with accrual, you do have separate, call it estates. Yes, you wouldn't be liable for their debt, but it would definitely take into account what assets they have in place. And I think that leads on to, people feel as though when they get divorced they have this right to spousal maintenance, and that isn't always the case, and it's very dependent. Childcare maintenance is a big thing in South Africa, but spousal maintenance isn't always awarded.
That's a very interesting point, and I think a lot of people are under the misperception that they are entitled to maintenance from their spouse if the marriage comes to an end, whereas in fact in this country there's no statutory right to maintenance. And it really remains at the discretion of the court. So the court will make a decision based on their findings, but there is no entitlement to receive maintenance. And I think the reasoning behind it is that South Africa prefers what they call a clean break. So where couples get divorced, they try and separate the assets and let each spouse get on with their own lives financially and economically as much as possible. So I think you're right, maintenance, don't assume that there's going to be maintenance for you coming out of the divorce.
Yeah, no, there is so much to consider. And I just think when this does come about, as I said earlier, you want to just start having this conversation with your financial advisor to understand what the impact is financially on yourself.
And going back to the drawing board, so what is the simple things like your budget? What is your new budget? What does that look like? If you aren't going to get a spousal maintenance, what expenses do you need to pay? So I think sometimes after divorce, some people underestimate that the cost of two households, things like life insurance, insurance on your property, those kinds of things remain fixed. You're still on a medical aid. You might have to become a main member of your own medical aid. So I think it's important to understand your new budget and what your post-divorce life is going to look like.
You're right. A lot of those costs are fixed costs. They don't go away. The cost of your Wi-Fi, the cost of your garden service, your domestic worker. Those are costs that don't split in half just because you're getting divorced.
And your financial advisor can just help you ascertain, what it is you're then going to need or how to split those assets so that you're not disadvantaged through unintended consequences like taxes from withdrawal of retirement funds, for example, rather accessing other assets that can allow you to cater for those expenses.
Finally, I think that we just wanted to touch on your will. Obviously, if you're contemplating getting a divorce, an important aspect is to update obviously your estate plan and to rework your will.
You do have 3 months to update your will after your divorce. So the 3 months obviously starts at the date of your divorce, and in these 3 months, if you pass away, then they would assume that your intention wasn't to leave your assets to your ex-spouse. So there is a bit of leeway, but if you leave it after 3 months, then they assume that your intention was to leave your assets to your ex-spouse. So there is a risk of them inheriting your assets.
So there is a window period in which to sort that out.
Yes.
And I think, really what we're saying today is, if you find yourself trapped in an unhappy marriage, take steps to understand the financial implications of a divorce, and then find a financial planner and develop a strategy to create financial independence for yourself going forward.